DePauw started a new decade by preparing for the 1920 season at a new site. Culver Military Academy became the Tigers' training camp. But during those September workouts, Hugh Gibbs suffered a spinal injury and died several days later. After an opening loss to Purdue on October 2nd, DePauw won 4 straight, including a game which Valparaiso decided to forfeit in the third quarter. It was scoreless with DePauw on their 2-yard line when it was stopped to avoid the touchdown that was sure to follow, read a newspaper account. Pete Vaughn's Wabash team was 3-2 before the DePauw battle, which was again played at Indianapolis's Washington Park. It was scoreless until about a minute remained in the game. That's when Tiger quarterback Harold Galloping Galloway attempted a drop kick, which went squarely through the Wabash goalposts 52 yards away. In March of 1921, DePauw's entire student body gathered to break ground for a new athletic facility, Blackstock Field, to be named for its benefactors, 1886 graduate and trustee Ira Blackstock and his wife. Here's a closer look at the original design. By summer, a new football coach, Fred Walker, was in place. He guided the team to a 4-2 record before the Wabash game. Photos exist from the 2 skirmishes the Tigers lost to Notre Dame and Illinois, but their 6 triumphs included a 67-0 thumping of Kentucky's Georgetown, depicted here. Wabash was 6-1 with 2 foes remaining, DePauw and Marquette, losing only to national powerhouse Army. This shows the Little Giants' 9-0 triumph over Purdue. With 4 future school Hall of Famers on the team, the men in red had outscored opponents 123-24. It had rained all week and the field was muddy as more than 8,000 fans gathered at Washington Park in Indianapolis. This is a shot from game day. Alonzo Goldsberry passed to George Stazan for an early touchdown, and Elmer Roll scored 2 more TDs before the half when all the scoring was done. Wabash collected 14 first downs. DePauw had but 1, picked up on a Little Giant penalty. Within a few months, Wabash fans had something else to celebrate as the college's basketball team won a national championship. The fall of 1922 brought a new football coach to DePauw. James Ashmore came from the University of Iowa, where he was head basketball coach. This photo shows the Tigers scoring their first touchdown of the season versus Millikan. Here's a snapshot from the team's 34-7 loss to Notre Dame. Students of the era attended daily chapel in Meharry Hall and seemed to take their botany experiments to extremes. DePauw was 4-2 heading into the Wabash game. The Little Giants were 6-3 entering the season-ending battle, with 3 All-State players and triumphs over Michigan State and at Purdue seen here. On November 4th, big world news. Howard Carter discovered King Tut's tomb. Exactly 3 weeks later, students from both schools got gussied up and made the drive to Irwin Field in Indianapolis for a game which was scoreless at halftime. Whatever Wabash coach Pete Vaughn said during the break worked. The Little Giants roared in the second half, with William Singleton scoring 2 touchdowns. The fearsomely named Tiny Knee took a kickoff return all the way for another score, seen here. And Wabash nailed the door shut in the fourth quarter when Elvin Elliott scooped up a block punt and scored. That headline could have read, "Tuttle Domination." In a year when Time magazine published its first issue and the portable radio was launched, and yes, that's it there, DePauw and its faculty celebrated a record enrollment of 1,516 students. The football Tigers opened the season by defeating Indiana University for the first time since 1896. At Wabash, Coach Pete Vaughn had lost 4 all-star players from his 1922 team, but this Little Giant squad was not rolling over. They tied Purdue, and a week before the DePauw game, waylaid IU 29-6. With the experiment of playing the rivalry contest in Indianapolis over, in November 1923, DePauw fans boarded the Monon to ride the rails from Greencastle to Crawfordsville. A sustained first-quarter drive by Wabash led to a Freddie Wyatt touchdown. William Singleton added another score in the second quarter, and DePauw didn't have a single first down in the first half. With a victory, Wabash closes the season with a 4-3-2 record, while DePauw goes 4-2-1. Greencastle marked its centennial in 1924 with a big parade. A variety of floats and vintage vehicles filled the downtown area, rolling past the local opera house. DePauw's cheerleading squad spent the fall searching for new ways to form human pyramids, while the Tiger football team kept finding new ways to lose. Head coach James Ashmore abruptly left the team in mid-season and was replaced by his assistant Guy Morrison. DePauw came into the Wabash game with a 1-5 record and had been outscored 151-30. Foes included Indiana, Purdue, and Illinois. The Little Giants were 4-4, but also played some heavy hitters. This shot is from the 21-7 loss to Purdue. Notre Dame and its four horsemen prevailed in South Bend 34-0. And here's proof that bulletin board material is not a recent phenomenon. In the first quarter of the rivalry game, a Wabash pass intended for Elvin Elliott was deflected and landed in Fred Wyatt's hands for a touchdown. Later, 2 runs for scores by Wyatt and Dana Gibson made it 21-0. DePauw had a first and goal from the Little Giant 1-yard line, but the men in red held and logged another shutout. In 1925, people lined up for lessons as a new dance craze, the Charleston, swept America. A new president was inaugurated at DePauw, Lemuel Merlin, an 1891 graduate of the university who had led Boston University for 13 years. A good workout in Bowman Gym, a restful sleep, or even a giddy moment couldn't make students forget that it had been 4 years since they'd defeated their arch rivals in football. At 2-4-1 heading into the big game, the Tiger prospects seemed bleak. Wabash came in at 4-3-1, with one of their wins coming against Purdue. On game day, DePauw sent a 60-member band and more than half of its student body to Crawfordsville. A furniture store offered a free turkey to the first Wabash player to score a touchdown. Dana Gibson, Wabash halfback, was the lucky recipient. He rambled more than 50 yards for pay dirt after grabbing an interception and was given the live bird after the game. Things got so comfortable for the Little Giants that Coach Pete Vaughn took a seat on the sidelines. On this day, for the first time ever, Vaughn employed a huddle to call plays, and virtually everything worked. On a dry, sunny afternoon, Wabash scored 16 points in the first half while shutting out their visitors from the south yet again. When it was over, Tiger smiles were forced after a 5th straight scoreless setback. Heading into the final game of the 1926 season, Wabash's 4-4 record was deceiving. The Little Giants had posted shutouts over Evansville, Ball State, and Butler. 3 of their losses came to Purdue, Minnesota, and Illinois. The team's fighting spirit was personified by Gordon Helm, who played without a helmet long after headwear became standard gear. DePauw had battled to a 4-2-1 record. As student journalists geared up for a key annual assignment, fans gathered on campus lawns and street corners to discuss what-ifs, and Tiger supporters got fired up at a pregame pep rally. On a cold, rainy day, the winning drive was a long one. Wabash running backs Fred Stu Myers and Clarence Peace carried the ball for 43 yards and 4 first downs, culminating in a Myers touchdown plunge from 1 yard out with about 3 minutes to play. A desperate attempt by DePauw to even the score, led by Dick Sturtridge, came up 25 yards short of the goal line. The final chapter in this football season was again written in scarlet letters. For DePauw fans, it meant bring on basketball season. On September 30th, 1927, the streets of Greencastle were buzzing with news that Yankee slugger Babe Ruth had clobbered his 60th home run of the season. But that fall, DePauw's football team wasn't setting any records. Coach William L. Hughes brought his team to Crawfordsville for the season's final battle with a 4-3 record. Captained by Perry Lower, Wabash was 6-2, with one of those setbacks coming at the University of Iowa. This contest stayed scoreless until just before halftime, when Coach Pete Vaughn sent in an entirely new backfield and the Little Giants started to rumble. A 40-yard completion for a touchdown gave the home team a lead. In the third quarter, a 60-yard DePauw drive ended with a scoring run by Don Brandenburg, marking the first time the Tigers had dented the scoreboard against their rivals since 1920. But a second Wabash touchdown in the game's final minutes produced a familiar outcome, a 7th straight Little Giant triumph in this series. Three weeks before the annual clash with Wabash, the 1928 Tigers, led by their coach William L. Hughes and seen in practice here, made the longest journey in the football program's history, traveling to West Point to play Army, a game DePauw lost 38-12. The following week, Army played Notre Dame in the legendary contest in which Coach Newt Rockne successfully implored his squad to win one for the Gipper. Heading into the rivalry game, DePauw was 5-2 with the other loss to Purdue. Wabash was 4-3-1 and was coming off a 14-0 setback in which they'd held the Boilermakers scoreless over the final 3 periods. When students weren't posing with their cars, climbing roofs, or creating other kinds of mischief, they were pinning their hopes on a victory over the other guys. The Little Giants scored 2 touchdowns in the first quarter on runs by Clayton Weist and Russell Hankins, after which, as a newspaper writer declared, they quit for the day. DePauw put 7 points on the board in the second quarter on a Don Brandenburg run and 13 more in the third stanza. One on a fumble recovery in the Wabash end zone, another when Brandenburg grabbed a second fumble and raced in from 25 yards out. For the first time since 1920, bragging rights returned to Greencastle. As the Roaring Twenties ended, Wabash became the first Indiana college to play football under the lights. Every 1929 home game except the DePauw contest was played at night. The smiles and fancy duds in the Tiger grandstands were befitting a winning team. DePauw's October 19th game at Purdue's Ross-Ade Stadium became the first of 3 straight losses the Tigers suffered after winning their first 3. 6 days after the Boilermaker game, economic suffering hit home with what history recalls as Black Friday, the stock market crash that paved the way for the Great Depression. 29 days later, with America still reeling, an annual football rivalry was renewed. Reginald Sullivan, mayor-elect of Indianapolis and 1898 Wabash graduate, got out of his office and was on hand to see a game that DePauw was slightly favored to win. Pete Vaughn's 3-5 Little Giants got on the scoreboard first when DePauw's Guernsey Van Riper grabbed a punt and for some reason retreated into his team's end zone, leading to a safety. The visitors grabbed a lead in the third quarter when halfback Hugh Hogan hauled in a flat pass and rambled in for a touchdown. But halfway through the final period, Wabash mounted a drive that decided the outcome. On 4th and goal from the 10, Clayton Weist took a handoff, shook off 3 Tiger tacklers, and went into the end zone standing up. The vintage scoreboard shows the final tally.